dared make such a demand. The gods found themselves trapped in an impossible situation. They could sacrifice one of their most beloved goddesses to a giant's lust, or they could leave Thor permanently weakened and Asgard vulnerable to every enemy that prowled the borders. The council erupted in frantic debate. Some suggested launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. Others proposed trickery or negotiation, but every path led to either devastating war or humiliating surrender. Heimdall, the far-seeing guardian who watched over the Rainbow Bridge, had remained silent throughout the heated discussions. When he finally spoke, his words stopped every conversation in the hall. His suggestion was so outrageous, so completely unthinkable, that even Loki's jaw dropped open in shock. The gods stared at Heimdall as if he had lost his mind, but they were out of other options. What he proposed, however, would challenge everything Thor stood for as a warrior. Heimdall's words hung in the air like a challenge to the very foundations of Norse honor. The far-seeing god had suggested that Thor disguise himself as a bride and infiltrate Thrym's wedding feast to recover Mjolnir. He spoke with calm authority, tie housewife's keys about his waist, and pin bridal jewels upon his breast. The idea was so fundamentally opposed to Norse concepts of masculine honor that Thor's initial response shook the very walls of Asgard. He declared the plan preposterous and swore he would never hear the end of it if word spread that the Thunder God had dressed as a woman. The assembled gods watched in tense silence as their mightiest protector wrestled with a challenge that could not be solved through brute force or lightning strikes. They had already considered launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. No other choice remained. Thor paced the hall like a caged wolf, his massive fists clenched as he grappled with the impossible choice between his warrior's pride and his duty to protect Asgard. Every instinct in his body rebelled against the idea of abandoning his identity as a fearsome warrior to play the role of a delicate bride. Loki stepped forward with barely contained excitement, volunteering to accompany Thor as his maidservant. The trickster god's eagerness to participate in this elaborate deception revealed his true nature. While Thor struggled with the concept, Loki was already plotting the specifics of costumes, mannerisms, and the lies they would need to maintain throughout their dangerous mission. The transformation began with layers of bridal linen draped over Thor's massive frame. Servants brought forth delicate jewelry, housewife's keys that symbolized domestic authority, and a dainty hood for his head. Finally came the precious necklace of Brisingr. Each item added to the disguise felt like another blow to Thor's warrior identity. When he finally looked at his reflection, the god of thunder saw an unconvincing bride staring back at him. Thor finally accepted the plan because no alternative existed. The unlikely pair prepared to set off for enemy territory, where their deception would face its ultimate test among giants, eager to celebrate their lord's triumph. The great hall of Thrym's fortress buzzed with excitement as giants gathered to witness their lord's marriage to the most beautiful goddess in all the 9 realms. Thor sat at the high table in his bridal disguise, surrounded by massive frost giants who raised their drinking horns in celebration. The feast spread before them displayed the giants' wealth and power. Roasted oxen filled enormous platters, fresh salmon gleamed on silver dishes, and barrels of mead stood ready to fuel the night's festivities. Thor's legendary appetite struck like a thunderbolt. He polished off an ox and ate whole salmon in moments, tearing through the meat as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. 3 measures of mead vanished as quickly as if someone had poured them into a bottomless pit. The assembled giants watched in stunned silence as the delicate bride consumed more food than most warriors could handle. Thrym's eyes narrowed with growing suspicion. This goddess ate like a battle-hardened warrior, returning from a long campaign, not like the refined Freya he expected to marry. Loki stepped forward with the smooth confidence of a master storyteller. He spun a tale about Freya's 8-day fast in eager anticipation of reaching Jotunheim and marrying the mighty Thrym. The explanation painted a picture of a lovesick goddess, so excited about her wedding that she had refused all food during her journey. The giants nodded in understanding, their suspicions melting away as they accepted this romantic explanation. Thrym felt honored by such devotion and relaxed completely, his doubts vanishing. Beneath his bridal veil, Thor's rage simmered like molten metal ready to explode. Every moment at the feast brought new challenges as he struggled to maintain feminine mannerisms while surrounded by his enemies. His massive hands shook with barely controlled fury as he watched the giants celebrate what they believed was their victory over Asgard. The critical moment finally arrived. Thrym commanded his servants to bring Mjolnir forth, the very moment Thor had trained his eyes on since dawn. The servants placed the legendary weapon before the disguised bride as part of the traditional ceremony. Thor's fingers closed around Mjolnir's familiar handle, and lightning immediately crackled through the hall. He ripped away his bridal veil and roared his true identity to the shocked giants. Thrym's eyes widened in terror as he realized the bride he had been celebrating was actually the god of thunder himself. Thor swung Mjolnir, killing Thrym instantly after crushing his skull with Mjolnir, then turned on the assembled giants, and even the pleading giantess met Mjolnir's crack before the hall fell silent. The theft that had begun with arrogance ended in complete destruction. This tale reveals how even the mightiest heroes must sometimes sacrifice their pride to protect what matters most. Back in Asgard, the Aesir never spoke of the bearded bride again, though a few still hide a smirk when Thor raises Mjolnir. And we end this story with a very valuable lesson. Never steal Thor's hammer. And if you're going to, don't make him dress like a woman. You've heard of a goddess whose beauty was unmatched. But what if I told you that her beauty wasn't what it seemed? In fact, her allure led to some of the darkest consequences in ancient myth. This goddess, adored by many, held the power to captivate anyone with a mere glance. She was so beautiful that her charm could sway the gods, kings, and mortals alike. But this beauty came with a deadly price. The goddess we're talking about is none other than Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love and beauty. While she is often depicted as the epitome of grace, sensuality, and allure, her beauty was more of a curse than a gift. Aphrodite's powers extended beyond just physical beauty. Her charm was irresistible, but it came at a cost. Her very presence could bring turmoil. Many heroes and kings fell victim to their obsession with her. Take Paris, for instance. His decision to choose Aphrodite as the fairest of the goddesses set in motion the events that led to the Trojan War. His desire for her beauty caused the death of thousands and the fall of Troy. But Aphrodite's beauty didn't just destroy men, it could break gods too. The tale of her and Ares, the god of war, exemplifies this. While Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths, her passionate affair with Ares led to chaos among the gods. Her beauty wasn't just about attraction, it caused jealousy, betrayal, and ultimately destruction. Despite her dazzling appearance, Aphrodite was also a figure of deceit and destruction, proving that beauty, when it holds such power, can be dangerous. It's no wonder the ancient Greeks warned that appearances can be deceiving. Aphrodite's beauty may have dazzled the world, but her story teaches us that sometimes what's on the surface can mask a much darker reality. So, was Aphrodite's beauty a blessing or a curse? The myths suggest that beauty, when wielded by the gods, is never what it seems. If you want to uncover more hidden truths about gods and goddesses from the ancient world, hit that subscribe button. There's so much more to explore in these captivating stories of the past. Imagine having a wish so powerful that everything you touch turns to gold. Sounds like a dream, right? But for King Midas, this dream turned into a nightmare. Let's dive into his tragic story. Once upon a time, King Midas ruled over a prosperous kingdom known for his wealth and opulence. But Midas wasn't just content with riches. He wanted more. He wished for the ability to turn anything he touched into gold. One day, the god Dionysus appeared before him and, impressed by Midas's devotion, granted him the wish. At first, Midas was overjoyed. Everything he touched, his food, his treasures, his furniture, transformed into gold. His wealth grew beyond imagination, and his joy knew no bounds. But soon, Midas realized the curse of his wish. He touched a rose, gold. He touched his food, gold. Desperate for a meal, he tried to drink water, gold. In horror, Midas realized that even his daughter, whom he loved dearly, turned into a lifeless golden statue when he touched her. Furious with the consequences of his greed, Midas begged Dionysus for mercy. The god, seeing the king's suffering, told him to wash in the river Pactolus. And in that moment, Midas's golden touch was taken away. The river's waters, now imbued with Midas's curse, carried gold downstream, forever tainting the land. King Midas's story is a reminder that greed often blinds us to the consequences of our desires. His once prized gift became his greatest curse, teaching us that not all treasures are worth the price. If King Midas's tale of power and greed left you thinking, make sure to subscribe for more epic Greek myths and their timeless lessons. Stay tuned for more stories of fate, love, and the god's wrath. You thought fairy tales were magical. Think again. The real origins of these classic tales are disturbing, gruesome, and filled with horror. Many of these stories have been sanitized for modern audiences, but their original versions were filled with betrayal, curses, and brutal consequences. From Pinocchio's horrifying fate to the true story of Bluebeard, let's dive into the darker side of fairy tales that history tried to erase. Fairy tales weren't always about happily ever after. Many of them were cautionary tales, warning of real dangers, human cruelty, and supernatural horrors. 1. The original Pinocchio, a gruesome fate. Before Disney made him a lovable puppet, Carlo Collodi's original Pinocchio was a terrifying little troublemaker. Instead of learning his lesson, he was hanged from a tree by a group of bandits, left to suffocate as a punishment for his misdeeds. 2. Bluebeard, the serial killer's tale. Bluebeard was not a misunderstood nobleman. He was a full-blown serial killer. In Charles Perrault's version, Bluebeard marries multiple women and forbids them from entering one locked room. When his latest wife disobeys, she discovers the corpses of his past wives hanging from hooks. He nearly kills her too, but she's saved at the last second by her brothers. Some believe this gruesome tale was inspired by real-life figures like Gilles de Rais, a nobleman convicted of horrific crimes. 3. The Pied Piper, a tale of mass disappearance. The Pied Piper of Hamelin was not just about a man who played music to lead away rats. He also took the children. In some versions, the town refuses to pay him for his services, so he takes revenge by luring all of their children into a cave, where they are never seen again. Historians believe this could be based on a real event, where an entire group of children from Hamelin mysteriously vanished in the Middle Ages. 4. Rumpelstiltskin, a vengeful trickster. In the original versions of Rumpelstiltskin, when the young queen guesses his name, he doesn't just leave. He flies into a rage so intense that he tears himself in half. In some versions, he stomps on the ground in fury, falling into a pit and disappearing forever. His obsession with taking the queen's child has led some to believe he wasn't just a trickster, but something far darker. 5. The Robber Bridegroom, a wedding night nightmare. This lesser-known grim tale tells the story of a young woman forced to marry a wealthy man. Suspicious of her husband-to-be, she follows him to his home, only to discover that he and his band of robbers murder and eat women. She watches in horror as they butcher a young girl, cutting her into pieces. Luckily, she escapes and exposes them, leading to their execution. 6. The Juniper Tree, a tale of cannibalism and revenge. One of the most horrifying grim fairy tales, The Juniper Tree tells of a stepmother who decapitates her stepson, cooks his body, and feeds it to his unsuspecting father. The boy's sister buries his bones under a juniper tree, and from the tree the boy returns as a vengeful spirit, transforming into a bird and dropping a millstone on his stepmother, crushing her to death. 7. The Girl Without Hands, a story of betrayal and survival. In this disturbing fairy tale, a poor man accidentally sells his daughter to the devil in exchange for wealth. When she resists the devil's temptations, her own father chops off her hands to fulfill the bargain. Eventually, she escapes, gains magical silver hands, and finds a happier fate, but not before enduring unimaginable suffering. Why were these stories so disturbing? Fairy tales weren't just for children. They were warnings, morality lessons, and sometimes outright horror stories meant to instill fear and obedience. Over time, many of them were altered, softened, or rewritten to make them more acceptable. Which of these dark fairy tales shocked you the most? Want to uncover more forgotten stories and chilling legends? Subscribe now and dive into the forgotten history of fairy tales.
Athena, the goddess of wisdom, war, and strategy, was one of the most powerful deities in Greek mythology. Feared by enemies, honored by heroes, and even challenging Zeus himself, Athena's legacy shaped legends, wars, and the very foundations of civilization. But was she truly a goddess of justice, or was there a darker side to her wisdom? Let's dive into the real story of Athena. Athena wasn't born like other gods. She burst fully grown from Zeus's head, armed with a spear and shield, a goddess of war and wisdom from the very start. But her story is more than just divine power. It's one of strategy, conflict, and influence that shaped the Greek world. The protector of heroes, Athena wasn't just a warrior. She was a tactician, a guide, and the ultimate ally to heroes. She helped Odysseus outwit the gods, gave Perseus the shield to defeat Medusa, and was the unseen force behind many Greek victories. The battle for Athens, Athena and Poseidon competed for control of the greatest city in Greece. Poseidon offered a mighty ocean, but Athena gave the olive tree, a symbol of wisdom and prosperity. The people chose her gift, and Athens was named in her honor. The merciless judge? Athena may have been wise, but was she just? When Medusa was assaulted in her temple, Athena didn't punish Poseidon, she punished Medusa, turning her into a monster. Later, she created the first court of law, showing her power wasn't just in battle, it was in justice, law, and politics. Wisdom and war, always balanced. Unlike Ares, the god of chaos and bloodshed, Athena's warfare was tactical, calculated, and precise. She was the goddess of the battlefield, but also the goddess of philosophy, craftsmanship, and knowledge, a balance between violence and intelligence. Her lasting legacy, Athena's symbols, the owl, the shield, and the olive tree, still represent wisdom, strategy, and peace today. The Parthenon, her great temple, still stands, and her influence can be seen in modern philosophy, war strategy, and even democracy itself. Athena wasn't just a goddess of wisdom. She was a warrior, a ruler, and a force that shaped civilizations. But was she truly wise, or just the ultimate strategist who always got her way? Want more deep dives into legendary gods and goddesses? Subscribe now and uncover the myths and realities of ancient deities.
Imagine being one of the greatest hunters in the world, known for your unmatched speed and skill. But despite all your abilities, your destiny is determined by a simple golden apple. Let me tell you the tragic tale of Atalanta, the huntress who couldn't escape her fate. Atalanta was abandoned at birth by her father, Zeus, who didn't want a daughter. Left to die in the wilderness, she was raised by a she-bear, learning to hunt and survive. As she grew, Atalanta became a legendary warrior, her skills in hunting unmatched. But no matter how great she became, she could never escape one thing, her prophecy. A prophecy foretold that Atalanta would only marry a man who could outrun her in a race. As the years went by, many suitors came, eager to win her hand. But Atalanta, fiercely independent, defeated them all. Her speed was unbeatable, and no man could match her skill. Then came Meleager, a brave hero who had heard of Atalanta's strength and beauty. Unlike the others, he didn't boast about his abilities. Instead, he came prepared with a plan. Meleager, knowing Atalanta's curse, asked the goddess Aphrodite for help. She granted him 3 golden apples, which he used to distract Atalanta during their race. As Atalanta raced ahead, confident of her victory, Meleager tossed the apples one by one in her path. The golden apples were so beautiful, they distracted Atalanta just enough to slow her down. In the end, Meleager won the race, and Atalanta was forced to marry him, despite her reluctance to give up her independence. But the story doesn't end in happiness. Atalanta and Meleager's marriage was plagued with regret. Atalanta, still driven by her need for freedom, felt trapped by the very love she couldn't escape. And in the end, Meleager, whose destiny was also marked by the gods, tragically died before she could ever truly be free. Atalanta's story is a tale of love, fate, and the clash between personal destiny and desire. Despite her unmatched strength and independence, her fate was sealed by love, and her story remains a tragic reminder of how even the most powerful can be brought down by what they cannot control. If Atalanta's bittersweet story of fate and love left you in awe, subscribe for more untold Greek myths and the heroes who shaped the ancient world. Loki's punishment was brutal. Bound deep within a cavern, his body lashed to 3 jagged rocks with the entrails of his own son. Above him, a serpent hung poised, venom dripping relentlessly onto his exposed skin. This scene, drawn from the poetic Edda and the prose Edda, became a symbol of both divine vengeance and suffering that echoed through Norse legend. But the gods never counted on one presence: Sigyn, Loki's faithful wife. Her hands trembled as she knelt beside him, catching each drop of poison before it could sear his flesh. Her quiet devotion became a fragile shield against the god's wrath. Why did she choose loyalty over escape? The answer reveals a truth about love that endures even when the world itself seems lost to darkness. Yet before the cavern, before the venom and the silence, there was a betrayal that shook the heart of Asgard. Balder was the light of Asgard, cherished by gods and mortals alike. His laughter filled the halls, a warmth that even the golden apples of Idun could not rival. When ominous dreams began to trouble him, his mother Frigg, desperate to protect her son, secured oaths from every creature and object in existence never to harm him. All, that is, except the mistletoe, too slight, too innocent to warrant suspicion. Loki saw opportunity in what others dismissed. He fashioned a dart from that fragile branch and sought out Hoder, Balder's blind brother. "Here," Loki murmured, placing the weapon in Hoder's uncertain grasp, "let me guide your hand." The dart struck its mark. In an instant, Balder's light was snuffed out, his presence gone from the world. The gods stood in stunned silence, their joy shattered. Loki lingered in the shadows, the faintest smile on his lips, before slipping away unseen. The prose Edda tells us the pyre burned for 9 nights. Balder's wife, Nanna, overcome with grief, cast herself onto the flames, her spirit entwined with his. The gods heaped treasures upon the funeral bier, Odin's ring Draupnir, Balder's own ship Hringhorni, to honor him, but no offering could fill the void left behind. The air grew heavy with suspicion. As the smoke twisted skyward, word spread of an old woman whispering to Hoder in the moments before the fatal blow. When Thor forced the truth from a trembling servant, silence fell like a shroud. Loki's name was not spoken, but its weight pressed upon every heart. The gods had tolerated his mischief, his clever lies, even the theft of Sif's hair. But this was different. The poetic Edda names him plainly: Loki, the guileful who brought it about, from which all misfortune came. Odin convened the gods to pass judgment. No mead flowed, no boasts rang out. The All-Father's single eye burned cold as he named Loki Oathbreaker and Kinslayer. Weapons gleamed in restless hands. Even gentle Friar's fingers tightened around his sword. Loki understood the god's fury. He fled Asgard, his mind racing with schemes. As told in the prose Edda, he built a lodge in the mountains, doors on every side, always watching for his pursuers. Still, he could not outrun their vengeance. Odin's gaze found him, even in hiding. When the gods arrived, Loki tried to slip away, transforming into a salmon to evade capture in the river's swift current. But Thor's grip proved stronger than fate. Dragged back through the gates he once helped raise, Loki passed faces twisted with anger and betrayal. The god's judgment was swift. The path ahead led not to mercy, but to a place where pain and silence waited in the damp and the dark. They forced Loki into the heart of the earth, a cavern where the air pressed cold and heavy, and every sound echoed off stone walls, slick with damp. Water dripped steadily from above, each drop magnifying the hush that settled over the gods as they set to their grim task. The stench of venom lingered, sharp and persistent, mingling with the iron tang of old blood.